Stand! Stand! Stand!
You want to dance? Ask me nicely. Let's talk. Better listen very carefully.
No problem. You having fun?
No!
Thanks.
Hello, and welcome to Jean-Claude Van Damme, the podcast where we talk about Van Damme movies because he has not lost his balls. This is episode 15, talking about the 1994 film Street Fighter, and joining me today is my guest Conor Malcolm Crawford from the band 10 Flowers, amongst other things. How you doing, Conor?
Hey, doing good. How about you, Marcus?
I'm in a pretty decent mood right now, actually.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start out in the usual way. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your Van Damme experience, what you had seen about him before this, if at all, and what you knew about him, and kind of your general thoughts on him.
Yeah, so the only Van Damme movie I'd watched before this was Bloodsport, which I really loved, honestly. It was pretty great. And I didn't know much about him before that, I always think I just thought of him as a washed-up action star who had kind of a cult following, but I did know that he'd done JCVD, and that had got him a lot of critical acclaim. And also, actually, a couple days ago, I watched Jean-Claude Van Johnston, the Amazon pilot featuring him.
What'd you think of that?
It was okay. I thought I wanted it to be much funnier than it was.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it. I guess maybe if you, I don't know, followed his career more so, or
Yeah.
a huge fan of his, maybe it comes off a little bit better
Right.
to someone like me.
No, totally. I was just expecting more of like a gag-a-minute kind of thing, but I can see how that wouldn't happen.
Well, luckily you watched Street Fighter.
Yes!
So what's also your experience with Street Fighter? Were you a big fan of the games growing up or anything?
I feel like I played it a few times. There was an arcade back in close to my hometown called Fun Spot, where, they had like the biggest arcade collection of any place in the world for a while. And they had Street Fighter. And I did play that a few times. I wasn't like a huge fan, but I did know of it. I knew the iconography. I knew about Ryu, It was something that was
Ryu?
around. Ryu, yeah. I found out that's not the way you say it. Thanks, America.
Well, yeah, pretty much. And what I did notice, though, is that Van Damme was Van Damme and Raul Julia, who plays Bison in this, were the only two people to actually say Ryu in the entire movie.
Oh, no. Shit, yeah.
Everyone else said Ryu.
That sounds about right. I mean, Van Damme seems weird, actually genuinely knowledgeable about Asian culture and Japanese culture, so kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and Raul Julia's just, a gentleman.
Oh,
So
yeah, exactly.
he gets things right.
Dapper guy.
So, yeah, I was also I was a big fan of the Street Fighter games growing up, especially Street Fighter 2, of course. So, yeah, I remember seeing this as a kid and being excited for it, and of course I loved it. I loved the Super Mario Brothers movie when I saw that in theaters as a kid.
Oh, wow. I did not ever see that.
Oh, yeah, no, I still actually kind of love it. It has a soft spot for me, much like this film, and actually also much like the Mortal Kombat film.
Yeah, I have not seen Mortal Kombat either. I mean, I feel like I was born in like 92. I think I'm of this weird generation where like we didn't watch these movies. We know of them from Nostalgia Critic episodes. You know what I mean?
Oh, I didn't realize you were that much younger than me. I mean, not a whole lot, like 5 years, but yeah, that's a little bit of a time leap.
Oh God, I just made you feel old. Shit.
A little bit. I was
My
just like,
bad.
oh, I remember making my dad and my uncle take me to go see Super Mario Brothers, and
Right.
that was a year before this. Fuck. So you have seen Bloodsport, so you do at least kind of somewhat know about the Van Damme tropes, because they kind of all spring from Bloodsport, more or less. So we'll go through a couple of them, but since this is a Street Fighter movie, and it was produced heavily by Capcom, and also written and directed by Stephen E. D'Souza, who is kind of fantastic, and it's weird that he directed this movie.
Yeah, I know. Well, it sounds like he was not given a lot of preparation, or really like everything just went to hell in production.
Yeah, which I'm assuming you also read the Polygon article about Street Fighter?
That I did, because I'm a completist.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I highly recommend that. On the website Polygon, they have an article called Street Fighter, the movie, What Went Wrong, and it's kind of amazing.
It's a great article. It's a great piece.
Yeah, but Stephen E. D'Souza is mostly known as a writer, and he's written stuff like the first two Die Hard films, Commando, Running Man, 48 Hours, a bunch of cool stuff. But he also wrote another Van Damme movie, 1998's Knockoff, with Rob Schneider, and he also wrote the 1995 Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone and Rob Schneider. So he wrote two Rob Schneider movies in the 90s.
Does that keep him up at night? That's my question.
I'm sure it does. He was actually recently on an episode of I Was There Too with Matt Gorley. It was a live episode talking about The Running Man and Die Hard, I believe.
Nice. I mean, he should be proud of Die Hard. That is a perfect action movie. You know?
It is absolutely a perfect movie. And he's got some other good ones, too. Yeah. Like, I still love Die Hard 2. Commando and Running Man, 48 Hours are all excellent films.
48 Hours is fantastic.
Yeah, so the basically the background as far as the Polygon article and stuff I've read is that because he written all these great successful movies, they let him direct something, and Street Fighter was on the table, and they gave him about like a $35 million budget, which, you know, pretty decent for what the movie looks like. It looks like it's way more. Van Damme took like $8 million of that.
Oh God, really? Oh.
Yeah, no, he actually, according to the article, didn't get paid anything. He just let that happen so that he could cast the rest of the movie and put the money in there. So he seems like a decent guy, at least as far as that is concerned.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Van Damme tropes don't appear that much in this movie because it's more of a Street Fighter movie than just a Van Damme vehicle. But it was Capcom that wanted Van Damme as Guile, which again is weird casting.
Yeah, it really is, and I did think it was a very unusual Van Damme movie from what I've seen, in that like he's the star, but like there are like 12 or 13 other people who have parts in this movie.
There's like 15 main characters.
Yeah. Which
equals about 6 minutes of screen time each.
Exactly.
According to the article. It's ridiculous. He basically, Stephen E. D'Souza is a smart guy, and he's like, no, 7 is the max number that you can do. Like, look at all the, like, 7 is the max amount of characters you can keep in your head at once. So that's what he had, but then Capcom's like, yeah, but let's add 2 more. But what about these? People love these 2 characters. Right. And it just kind of went to hell. So first trope I just want to mention is nationality. Because that's one that isn't mentioned at all here, but he's playing Colonel Guile, the all-American hero from Belgium.
Yep. Oh my God. That son of a bitch Bison. Oh, it's great.
Oh, his line readings are amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, he's so invested. He really believes in this.
I mean, he really believes in the mountains of cocaine he was doing at the time.
Yes, and probably a little distracted by his divorce and by Kylie Minogue, most likely.
I mean, who wouldn't be? She was a very attractive lady.
Oh yeah, she's fun in this movie. Actually, I had a good time watching her.
But she's one of the people that gets maybe like 4 or 5 minutes of screen time, max.
Well, I was totally surprised she was in this. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, no, there's actually a pretty stellar cast overall of like kind of smaller time and character actors and stuff like that. So it has a great cast, and I think everyone does a pretty great job. Raul Julia is fucking wonderful in this movie.
Oh my God, yes. Raul Julia is amazing. I loved him.
This movie doesn't deserve him, but no, and he was at his worst at this point because he did just get operation on stomach cancer, and he was just very weak and pale and stuff when he first came on, so they kind of had to switch around the schedule, which led to the fight scenes not being fantastic because they had to film all of his stuff towards the end to let him try to eat and gain weight and become healthier. So instead of getting months to prepare for the fight scenes, everything was done like right beforehand. But honestly, like the fight scenes aren't bad. It's mostly they're just kind of horribly edited to disguise the fact that they're not that great.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's a lot of editing. It's a little messy. Like there's a lot of drop kicks. I feel like I'm not a fight choreography guy. Like it's not something I'm an expert in. I feel like a lot of our fellow dissolvers probably have more of a territory in that, but it did feel like it's a lot of repetition of the same moves over and over to cover up
and
for that.
Even some of the same shots I noticed a few times.
It's great. I was going to say, though, about Raul Julia, one of the things that's kind of painful while watching the movie is that I definitely noticed that he looks thin and gaunt. Like, his cheekbones are stretched back. And it's really painful and sad if you know the story behind that.
Yeah, it is, and this was his last theatrically released movie. It was dedicated to him, but I mean, it's not the same the entire time. Like, there's a couple of scenes that were shot early on where you can tell he's like skin and bones.
Yeah.
But he gained a little bit of weight. He got a little bit healthier towards the end. So some of his other scenes, like, he's got a lot more energy. He's got, you know, a little bit more of a figure, and plus he's wearing what looks like a 50-pound suit.
Yeah, that thing's enormous. It was great. I love that part of it.
Which actually, the person that designed that costume got her own credit.
Excellent.
in the opening credits.
Good for her.
So yeah, personal vendetta is another big trope of Van Damme films, and he actually does have that because Bison stole his buddy Charlie, who is a combination of two characters. He turns into Blanca, but he's also supposed to be Charlie Nash, also from Street Fighter. And also, they're just kind of like mortal enemies, Bison and Guile.
Yeah. I did love the warrior poet kind of aspect to it, where Bison just really wants to fight him, like one-on-one. That was a fantastic bit, you know.
Well, yeah, well, that's another thing that pops up a lot in Van Damme films is that, like, or even just action films in general, it's like there's a fighter, there's a warrior that's just so great, you have to respect him, you want him dead.
Yeah.
But you have to make it a fair fight.
It's totally like the warrior philosophy, Lao Tzu kind of thing. Or Sun Tzu, I should say.
And also, this is kind of weird to bring up, but Street Fighter is very, not so much a forgotten movie, but it's shit on a lot.
Yeah.
It was ravaged by critics when it came out, so you would think it would have been this massive flop, but it actually wasn't, and it grossed about 100 million worldwide, so it, like, tripled its budget, maybe a little bit less with marketing and stuff, but...
Yeah,
it was surprisingly a hit.
It did okay. I think that, as the Polygon article says, like, Hollywood remembers the domestic gross more than anything. Like, it's going to remember, at least back in the 90s, that your movie didn't do well in America. I think at this point in 2017, Street Fighter would get, like, a sequel. Like, that wouldn't be the same issue.
Oh, within 2 years, there would be a sequel to this movie, yeah.
Exactly.
And they would just market it more towards the international audience,
right,
which they already try to do.
They'd go to
and that
China.
Was, especially around this time, was what happened with most of Van Damme's films. They would do okay stateside, anywhere from, like, $10 to $30 million, but then it would get, without a doubt, like 50-60 million internationally, and then make them big hits.
America doesn't know what it's missing.
They really don't. They really don't. He's much more of an international guy.
Yeah.
You know, being the all-American hero from Belgium.
Exactly.
So, another one that is somewhat of a trope, at least in the martial arts movies he does, is a tournament fight, which you would think there would be in a Street Fighter movie, but no, not really. There's a cage match or two, but that's about it.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by that, honestly. I was like, how is this called Street Fighter? Like, there is no street fighting.
Well, I mean, if you want a movie more like that, watch the Mortal Kombat movie, because that is very much so like a tournament fight. But I think both D'Souza and just the producers from Capcom decided early on that they didn't want to make a tournament movie. They wanted to actually create a storyline shoving all of these characters in here.
Right, yeah, exactly. No, that makes sense. It was just funny where I'm like, is this called Street Fighter? Like, why? They're not, it's like a fake UN versus dictator movie.
There may be one fight in a street.
Yeah, maybe one.
There's a couple of brawls, but yeah, nothing too much. So nudity and shirtlessness, you're not going to get in a PG-13 aimed at kids movie. Mostly you get him in a wife beater, but those muscles are ripped.
Well, as the Polygon article talked about, this got an R rating, and they had to heavily cut it to get a PG-13, which was really funny to me. I was expecting a lot more gore as well, or like, you know, just a certain amount more violence. It's more cartoony this way.
It very much is. There's a little bit of blood here and there, and a lot of people die. Like, people get shot left and right. There's just no blood, which is kind of weird because it is ultra violent in that way. There's just no blood.
Right.
But it's funny because it did get an R rating, and then they trimmed it down so much that it got a PG rating. So they tossed in a couple of like cuss words in order to make it PG-13.
Yeah, like son of a bitch, or, you know, shit, or whatever, you know. It's great.
Yeah, they just ADR'd in afterwards instead of maybe just like putting a little bit more of the violence or the blood back in. They're just like, no, we'll just make him say shit. The kids will love it.
That sounds about right. Oh man, this poor movie.
Yeah. So surprisingly, which again, you have Van Damme in your lead. I know it's maybe not so much the like one of his Guile's moves or anything like that, but he doesn't do a single split in this movie, which is kind of disappointing.
I noticed that as well. I was a little bummed. I was like, where are the splits? What's my man doing?
Yeah, and apparently Van Damme, this is IMDb rumors, so who knows, turned down playing Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat movie to do this instead, which Johnny Cage, the character in the game, is actually based on Van Damme originally, and does have his main move is the split punch. So, like, at least he could have done it if he had gone with Mortal Kombat, but I think Street Fighter needed him a little bit more. But he does do a few spin kicks during the Bison fight. And a little bit of breakdancing?
Yeah, I kind of saw that. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Same thing with the slow-mo screaming. He does a little bit of that in the Bison fight, but not too much otherwise.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
The final trope I want to bring up is drinking and or dancing, which he does not do in this film, but if you watch MC Hammer video for Straight to My Feet from this soundtrack, he is in that video and does both drink and dance in it.
Oh my god, I have to watch that. I'm going to go watch that right after this. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be the song that plays at the end. But it's MC Hammer, or Hammer as he was known then, featuring Deion Sanders, the football player, I believe.
Oh my god.
And then yeah, Van Damme is in the video, smoking cigars, drinking, dancing with Hammer. It's kind of amazing.
So it's Van Damme playing himself basically at that time.
No, he is playing his character from Street Fighter. He is dressed up as Guile.
Really? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I don't think he has the blonde hair. I think he's just wearing a beret to cover the fact that it's not blonde anymore.
Oh, yeah. Can we talk about the blonde dye job?
Oh, man. Because, of course, Guile in the game has, like, a straight-up shock of, like, blonde hair. It's almost like a kid in play. Or like a kid, rather.
Yeah.
But it's yellow hair, and they just give him the shittiest, like, gold-colored dye job.
It looks like Jared Leto in Fight Club.
Yes, very much so, except not as long. He doesn't grow it out, really. It's his usual thing. It's still kind of shaved around the sides, but it's just a terrible dye job, especially against his very tan skin. It just doesn't look right.
No, it really doesn't. It's just very funny contrasting that to Bloodsport, where it's like, that's his actual hair. Like, I know what he looks like.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing here. He has that weird dye job. Like, he's overly buff, like even more so than usual, like kind of like what Stallone did by the later Rocky movies, to where he's not as like fit, he's more just like buff with muscle in a kind of weird way. Yeah. And in addition to like, you know, the personal problems he was having and the cocaine addiction and stuff like that, he does just appear very sweaty all the time. Well, he like not in a blood sport, like I'm in a martial arts tournament sweaty kind of thing, but just like glistening constantly because he is high on cocaine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from that article, like, he was partying all the time and was just constantly hungover, you know, and just would show up on set really late because he was recovering, you know, so I think that really shows in the movie to some extent.
Well, yeah, because again, even though he is the star, he's the top billed. He has more screen time than I think anyone else, except for maybe Raul Julia, who gets a ton of screen time. He does, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very oddly structured movie because there are so many characters and so much going on. It's very breakneck. There's actually not a lot of. I felt like there's not a lot of downtime. You know, not a lot of like. There's some one-on-one conversations, but pretty much everything's running ahead of the plot. It's very it's really strange.
Well, yeah, and it's weird because, again, they throw all of these characters at you and basically get the entire setup of the movie and all of these characters introduced within 20 minutes. A little bit less than 20 minutes, but then we still have an hour and 20 minutes left of movie. And it does move very fast. It kind of never stops. It's at a breakneck pace. Yeah. But it still could lose about... This should have been a 90-minute movie, to be honest.
I totally agree. I was like, there are 20 minutes left in the Bison confrontation, and I'm like, is this still going? Yeah, but I was gonna say there's no passage of time. I think that's the thing with this movie that's kind of weird. There's no sense of like characters sleeping or like everything's constant.
Thinking about it, I was like, at most this maybe takes place in 2 days. I would feel.
There's no flow. I guess I'd put it that way.
I guess because they expect you to know all of these characters from the game, pretty much everyone gets maybe about a line of exposition or, like, character explanation. That's about it. And then you just are kind of supposed to go with it. But, of course, knowing the game or the characters, you just follow along pretty easily. But I wondered, for the audience in 94 that maybe hadn't played Street Fighter and just like, oh, a new movie with Van Damme, let's go see that, must have been so confused.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing where, like, this is also where video game movies, I think, proved that they don't have the best market, because there are certain people who want to watch these movies, and then everyone else who are just casual moviegoers just don't understand what's happening.
Perhaps. I think maybe Super Mario Brothers the year before kind of started that.
Yeah, most likely.
That one definitely bombed, and I think Mortal Kombat did pretty well. And like I said, this one did well, especially internationally, but I think that's because you have Van Damme and Raul Julia starring, that are both like more international actors, as well as the fact that it's based on, you know, a Capcom property, so that's going to play big in like Asian markets and stuff.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, that was the thing. You know, and I think it was probably marketed as kind of a martial arts movie. You know, it's Van Damme, it's this, it's that, which is huge in Europe and Asia, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched a couple of the trailers from the movie, and yeah, they're kind of ridiculous. They're all very quick cut, and it does play up the Van Damme and Raul Julia thing. But yeah, not showing much of any of the other characters, to be honest. Like, not really cycling through, or not like what you would think, to where like they have like an image of each person with like their name, like, oh, you remember these people from the game. No, it was mostly marketed as a Van Damme Raul Julia movie.
No, exactly, and that makes sense. You know, I totally get that, especially if, like, you know, I don't know if someone in Belgium is gonna play the Street Fighter 2 video game. You know. Do they
especially
care?
in 94, because that's like right around the time it was out and popular. Like, a lot of times it takes a couple of years for everyone to understand like its part in the culture.
Yeah, it's not a universal necessarily. How many Street Fighter games were there anyway?
Well, a lot. So technically, I guess there's only like 4 or 5 actual games, like numerical wise.
Yeah.
Because I know like a few years back there was Street Fighter 4, and I think they might have released a 5. But just Street Fighter 2 itself had like 5 editions that came out.
Oh my god.
And kind of everyone after that just had, you know, the original game, but then would have like a Turbo edition and a Championship edition and all this stuff. So they milked about 50 games out of 5 games.
Interesting. All right, I gotta check that out. Haven't played that in a long time. Wow.
Okay, so let's talk about the tone of this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's much sillier and slapsticky than I would have expected. I mean, maybe not so much as a child, just because like that's how it's aimed towards you, I guess. But yeah, a lot of one-liners in this, a lot of just kind of colorful, cartoony production design and fight moves, and just even the adults in this movie that still like shoot guns and kill people say insults. Like, I think Van Damme calls Bison Big Head, like, within the first 3 minutes. Like, just ridiculous kiddie stuff in a movie that's still filled with tons of violence.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I actually thought to myself was, this is one of the most diverse movies I have ever seen, which is kind of depressing, and that all the ethnicities are as caricatured as possible, save for maybe Ryu. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
mostly.
not necessarily in the worst ways, like, but like the Russian guy is just this big macho dummy, you know. The Jamaican DJ is slippery and like trying to get away, and you know, there's just this whole thing to it. I mean, it's an Eastern European country that seems to have no actual ethnicity.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, again, filled with great character actors and stuff like that. Like the guy that plays Zangief actually played Leatherface in the first 2 like remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh wow, he did look familiar actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't really see it because he, you know, wearing a leather face during that, of course. But no, just his size and everything ended up coming in handy way down the road. So he was actually, you know, pretty up there age-wise when he finally ended up doing that.
Yeah.
And of course, DJ, who you mentioned, is Miguel Nunez Jr., who has been in tons of things, like even still playing kind of younger characters, even though the dude's like in his 50s now. But he was in like the original Return of the Living Dead. He was in Joanna Man. He was in Kicking It Old School. Like, he's been in a million things.
Of course.
But yeah, no, kind of all over the place, even kind of switching who characters are, because they have E Honda in this, and you know, he's a sumo wrestler, but he's just like kind of Samoan in this.
Yeah,
strangely,
I think so. He mentions his ethnicity. I thought did he say Hawaiian or Samoan?
I think he said Samoan.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right.
But he was also still a sumo wrestler, which he talked about as well.
Right. Yeah.
And of course we do have Chun-Li in this movie as well, played by Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah.
Who I don't know a whole lot of. I've seen her in random things, but she's apparently in like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now or something, and that's kind of the most recent big thing she's done.
Oh yeah, she is in that. I remember that now.
But yeah, I kind of love everyone plays this really goofily, and to certain degrees, like I think Raul Julia takes it seriously, but he does do an over-the-top villain. Her as Chun-Li in this just makes me laugh so hard because she is very like calm and like serious and dramatic when talking about what happened to her father.
Yeah.
But as soon as she gets to a fight scene, her eyes go huge and her mouth gapes open and she just turns crazy in the best way.
No, she is really good. I loved the whole scene of her talking about her village because it's such a sad, like, true monologue, you know. And it's the kind of moment where a screenwriter is laying out the character's motivations, and then Bison just smashes them to pieces.
With one of the probably the best line of the movie.
Oh my God.
One that's very memorable.
It's amazing.
He's just like, the day that Bison came through your town is the most memorable day of your life, and to me, it was Tuesday.
That was the best line. I want to use that on somebody now. It made me so happy.
Well, get to pillaging towns, I guess.
There you go.
Might get a
Yeah,
chance.
raise villages. I mean, you know, that's the way to do it.
I guess we can jump into the plot a little bit. It's
Sure.
basically main setup is there's this fictional country called Shadaloo, and that's where Bison is located, and he is like a rebel military figure who has a huge army at his disposal and is trying to take over the world. And Van Damme as Colonel Guile is the leader of, what is it, the RN? Or AN, the Allied Nations?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Who have awesome blue camouflage that
Yeah.
just hides them so well.
It really pops.
Well, you had to make it colorful, I guess.
Right.
So, in the midst of this battle happening, there's all these other characters that get thrown in. You have Ryu and Ken, who are just kind of two hustler martial artists who have a whole side plot. So, Ryu and Ken are trying to sell guns to Sagat and Vega, so they kind of pair up characters for the most part just to introduce them faster.
They make a deal with Giles to infiltrate Bison's government. Meanwhile, Giles fakes his death for like 10 minutes.
He does have a really good fake death scene where he just like gets shot and collapses to the ground like, that Van Damme death acting.
Oh yeah, it's great. Chun-Li, meanwhile, as it turns out, is going undercover too to try to kill Bison. They're all trying to destroy him at the same time. He catches them all. Let me see what else is happening.
Yeah, which by the way, with Chun-Li, she is a reporter, but
Yes.
of course is just doing this undercover to try to get to Bison. And her team, like her camera crew team and news van team, is made up of E. Honda and Balrog, the boxer, played by Grandel Bush.
Yes.
Who is kind of awesome, and he gets in. Everyone by the end of the film is in their costumes, like from the video game, more or less. But I love that just randomly, I don't even think they showed this, but somehow Balrog just finds a pair of boxing gloves, I guess from the training room or something. It's like, now I'm going to do that.
Well,
which
I
again,
know
in
my
a street
goal.
fight, you don't want gloves, man. Just do
No.
that bare knuckles shit.
No, that doesn't make any sense. So Chun-Li monologues with Bison, and then meanwhile, it turns out that Giles comes back. The AN wants to negotiate with Bison, but he refuses, and Giles rallies the troops to go after Bison themselves and just out and out kill him and save the hostages that Bison is ransoming for $20 billion.
All right, yeah. That is very much the basic plot of it.
Yeah.
So, we're meeting all these characters in different situations. There's a good amount of fight scenes. There's probably a fight every 5 minutes or so, I would say, in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like you said, they don't waste a lot of time with dialogue or just like two people talking back and forth or anything.
No, exactly. Yeah, everything's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Van Damme, I guess around this time started doing this more, but this is probably the worst offender of just terrible one-liners that make me laugh to no end.
Oh my god. The balls one is so bad and so good at the same time.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned he gets orders to not go after Bison, and he's just basically, he has this great monologue afterwards, but he's talking to this very smarmy AN person, and he's just like, oh, you've lost today, and he's like, no, you've lost your balls. And then proceeds to do this like Patton-esque monologue of like rallying the soldiers to go after Bison, and it's kind of great, and it's something that they used in the trailer just because it's powerful. Just like him saying, you want to go with me, and then everyone cheering, and then running off to their certain deaths.
Yeah, it was really funny where it was like, this is the worst possible thing you could do right now, to go after him. Like, what? Oh my god. That was the best part for me. I was just like, yay, we have no strategy.
Yeah, and Van Damme, he keeps having these really weird one-liners where he keeps referring to himself as something and then making a half joke about it. Like, he has one that's like, I'm the repo man, and you're out of business.
Yes.
And then also, very similar, he has, what is it? Your ass is 6 months overdue, and it's mine. Just like weird setup and payoff kind of one-liners.
Yeah, they don't feel well constructed. It's not like Commando where Arnold says, you know when I said I'd kill you last? I lied. You know. That, like, there's no sense of ownage there.
or like, blow off some steam.
Right, exactly. You know.
Yeah, it's not even about the kills or anything like that. It's more just kind of like silly one-liners. Like, there's a fighting tournament where Ryu is going to fight Vega, who I think is pretty awesome in this movie.
Yeah.
But then Van Damme just busts through the fighting ring in a tank, and then he just pops out and is like, you're all under arrest.
Yes, I remember that. That was great. Yeah, it's a weird movie where, like, you really feel the crunch time of every character to be the maximum they can be as written, but, like, there are so many characters that, you know, they're only their biggest traits.
Yeah, I'm trying, like, to not forget anyone, but I know that's going to happen because there are so many, because we haven't even talked very much about Blanca yet, who is Van Damme's friend Charlie. He gets turned into this monster Blanca from the video game with green skin and kind of red orangish hair. And basically Bison is putting him in this chamber and just very Clockwork Orange-esque, like, just feeding him negative images while pumping him full of, like, mutated plasma and shit like that. That's just, like, red and green liquids to pump in and turn him that color. But he also, his doctor, or the good doctor that's working for Bison against his will, is Dalsim from the game, but he's just very much like a regular doctor throughout, until by the end, through explosions and different chemicals being spilled on him, he slowly, like, gets his clothes in tatters and loses all of his hair. And they kind of tease that, like, chemicals get spilled on his arms, so, like, eventually, if there's a sequel, he'd be able to stretch his arms like in the game.
Oh, really? Okay, that's funny. I didn't know about this. Wow, I don't know anything about Street Fighter.
Well, basically what they did, they just made him, a regular doctor, but he had a chain around his neck, like he was chained to the wall, I guess. So he was going to have the chains hanging down, but then eventually, just, I guess, chemicals and explosions blow all of his hair off, as well as, like, tatter his clothes to where he kind of looks like Dalsim from the game now.
The best part for me of that whole subplot, of the Blanca subplot, was Van Damme being like, I'll help you, Charlie, and then he pulls out his gun and is about to murder him. Act of mercy.
A movie aimed at children, more or less, that, again, minus a couple of curse words, got a PG rating, and he was going to shoot his friend in the fucking head.
Remember, kids, if your friend is a deformed monster, the best thing you can do is to murder him.
Well, it's a little bit simpler than that. Just like, if your friend is weird or different than other people, just go ahead and shoot him.
It's for the best. It's for the best, really. Yeah, oh my god. Also, I love that the scientist is pumping in, like, Martin Luther King speeches in order to preserve his mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it goes from just kind of violent images of war and stuff and people getting shot and just kind of evil images, and then it's just like children playing in a field and the first 2 seconds of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. Oh, it's great. I love that. That and they choose to have them to basically kill themselves in the explosion.
Yeah, but again, the way they kind of set it up is like, well, obviously they got away because they're going to come back for the sequel, right? They're just going to be best buds now.
Yeah, it's a really funny movie in that regard. They're like, they're setting up little teases, but they're not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and there's small references to the game because more or less it's just kind of straight martial arts fighting. There's not really those super natural elements like in the game.
Yeah.
Like there are a couple very small ones, like during the locker room fight where Ryu is fighting against Vega and Sagat at the same time. And then Ken joins back up with them. There is a time where he actually does a Hadouken, and like you see him like do the move, and there's like a quick flash, but that's it.
Yeah, I remember that, actually. That was funny.
But they didn't get to actually put anything there because apparently they had to do so much with the editing so close to the wire to get it down to a PG-13. They didn't have time to actually put in any special effects.
Right.
Other than like the lightning at the end that Bison has.
Yeah, the electromagnetic current stuff was like the big part of it that, you know, kind of really turns the movie to science fiction in this really funny way. Because otherwise, it's more like an outsized fantasy, but then there are all these mad scientist elements to it, too.
But then there are a couple of moves, because like when Bison is gonna try to bring up Blanca to kill everyone, like the thing rises, and then Van Damme just like flies out of that doing a flying kick.
Yes.
In a ridiculous way, which you can see Van Damme stunt double so much in this movie. I have a feeling he has just as much screen time as Van Damme does.
Oh, I'm sure. I am absolutely sure. I mean, if you're that hungover, you need that guy on set, like on call.
Oh yeah, okay, but Bison's suit in this, because he like gets killed at some point, he gets electrocuted, and then his suit comes back online, and he has like a suit that revives him, so it's like doing CPR, and you see the chest rising and falling, and then it injects him with adrenaline and stuff, and then he comes back. But yeah, and then he is electrified, and it's very similar to like Ernest Goes to Jail, by the way.
Oh my god.
Because at one point he gets electrocuted, and then he can just shoot electricity at people. And watching Raul Julia in this movie, I was like, man, he would have made a really good Ernest, or at least been like a really good Ernest villain.
Totally. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't want to stoop to that, but it's a possibility. You know, what could have been?
Yeah, but that does make me sad. And yeah, rest in peace, Raul Julia. He is far too good for this movie and just eats scenery in the best way, but he is so committed and such a professional in this.
Right.
He really raises this above the bar of what it should have been.
No, he's fantastic. I mean, he's so over the top, but he's so like weirdly staunch and honorable, and yet just such a delicious villain. He's ridiculous. It's great.
It's so good, and he does have like one of the few actual video game references in this. Not only because like his flying throne basically is run by like a Super Nintendo controller, more or less.
Yeah.
But also like after everything's exploded and everything, he just yells out, because he's trying to blow up Van Damme's stealth boat. There is a stealth boat in this,
of course,
with mines that he has underwater. Also very similar to like Batman Forever, which came out a year later.
I thought of the exact same thing. Like 95, they're like this almost the same year, 94 and 95.
Yeah, exactly. Where like Two-Face and the Riddler are basically playing Battleship with mines.
Yes.
Like he's kind of doing that, but just with a video game controller. And then once the ship explodes, he's like, "Game over!"
Excellent.
It's delightful.
Oh man, this movie. Yeah.
And this movie also kind of reminds me a lot of Surf Ninjas. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not. You know, that definitely skipped my generation a little bit, I think.
It's mostly just a lot in the tone and the color scheme and stuff, and then just like all these rebels coming against a dictator kind of thing.
Of course,
with the blue uniforms and stuff. It's very much like that, but just much more violent than even that is.
No, exactly. I feel like the equivalent of this movie for me was watching G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra and Feeders. And just laughing my ass off at how stupid the entire movie was.
Oh, we didn't even mention this. Do we want to talk about what Bison's like compound or like his city was going to be called?
Bisonopolis.
And he has this great joke where he's just like, but the food court should be larger. We're going to get people from all over the world wanting to come in.
All the corporations will be interested.
And that's the thing. It has such a silly tone, and it is very colorful and cartoonish.
Yeah.
kind of a great way. Like, that's the thing, is that even if the action isn't spectacular, which it certainly isn't, it's enough, like, it's worth rewatching, even if you only saw it as a kid, just because it is actually still pretty funny and has some genuinely humorous moments in it.
No, exactly. There's like this absurd humor to it that's really fun. Like when okay, you gotta remind me, who's the Russian character? The Russian minion?
Zangief.
Zangief is like, what are they doing? They're coming after us. And they're like, dude, like, and DJ's like, look, man, like, this place is evil. Like, we're working for evil dictator. Like, I'm going to go. And he's like, why were you working for him? I got paid. You got paid?
Oh, I love the idea of him just doing that for free.
Right.
Also, when Chun-Li is trying to blow up Bison beforehand during some like party thing he's having, and she sends a truck full of explosives like careening towards him.
Yes.
And they see it on a monitor. Zangief is just like, quick, change the channel.
That was excellent. Oh, and also the biggest laugh of the movie for me, though, just because I love these kind of jokes, was Bison being like, there's a possibility we might lose. DJ, we must face this as honorable warriors. While DJ is quietly sneaking away and closing the door.
No, I agree. That was genuinely funny because it's
yeah.
just Raw Julia, just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with his mouth hanging open, just so proud to be dying with honor.
Yeah.
And then DJ just kind of slowly, like, creeping behind him and sneaking out the back. But I will say, for all the humor and everything, the action does pick up spectacularly at the end to where there is so much going on, but I have no idea what the fuck is happening during the last explosions.
No, it's pretty much a mess, and that's okay, you know. I think reading about the making of the movie makes you a lot more generous to its problems. Because you're like, well, it's amazing this got made at all.
It is quite amazing that it got made at all, and especially that, because I think like it all came together like within a year or less, because they had a date. They wanted it Christmas 1994. Not only just because it was popular at the time, but they wanted to sell toys for Christmas. And I think they had some kind of deal worked out with, I think it's Hasbro, but whoever makes G.I. Joe, where they were just going to kind of refurbish G.I. Joes that weren't selling anymore because it wasn't popular into Street Fighter characters like Van Damme and stuff. As well as they designed the whole, like, the tank that he has, and I think the stealth boat as well, so that they could kind of reincorporate G.I. Joe toys that weren't selling as those toys.
No, exactly. And you can totally see that. It's definitely a movie for action figures. Like, they wanted the tank, they wanted the boat, you know. They incorporated stuff into that just for that. It makes sense.
And I really wish I would have gotten some of that stuff as a kid. Like, I guess I didn't get enough toys, or maybe it didn't leave that big of an impression on me, but I would have loved to have the entire set of these toys still.
I knew a kid in school who had a Batman and Robin George Clooney action figure. Where you press the button and it went, "Hey, Freeze, I'm Batman."
I would kill for the Mr. Freeze figure from that line.
Oh my god, that'd be great.
Just a little action, a little 6-inch, 7-inch action figure of Arnold Schwarzenegger that just does nothing but ice puns when you hit his button.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. Oh my god, that'd be great.
Well, it would probably be much cheaper than that. It would only have one phrase. He would just say "chill" every time you push the button. Just chill, chill, chill.
Bingo.
Which I would have worn out immediately.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question.
So I guess we're getting kind of towards the end of the movie. Let's talk about the actual final shot, the freeze frame of this.
Yes. Oh god, I think I just did an automatic epic eye roll when I saw that.
Yeah,
like,
well,
oh, come on.
What it is recreating like the victory scene from Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of like just in their poses. Okay, I was trying to pull it up to see how similar it was. But no, it's pretty dead on. And Van Damme in particular does it looks so unnatural the way he poses his body, but it's exactly how Guile does it.
That's great. No, yeah, I mean, Van Damme in general in this movie is just such an odd fit. You can tell that that they wrote the movie for him, but also not really. You know, like Guile's is not a natural role for Van Damme. Bloodsport is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's because, again, he has so many cheesy one-liners that they're funny, but they don't really fly. They don't work. And also, he plays Guile as just like this kind of cocky asshole
Yeah.
the entire time, which is not really suiting for Van Damme. Like, he's much better and much more likable in just kind of earnest roles than playing the asshole, which I guess is more reflective of his actual personality in real life at this point in time.
Right.
Because this is basically the same year this and Time Cop came out, which were both like, Time Cop was over $100 million. This was almost $100 million. So these are like his two biggest hits until like way later in his career. Yeah. And just like, he was on top of the world's mega superstar, and then it just kind of steadily went downhill for the next couple of years, and then he didn't have another theatrically released film for like 9 years.
Yeah. No, exactly. And you know, I think that Van Damme is an actor who works best in like boyish, very likable roles, very like humble in a way, modest. I mean, he just has this odd quality to him where
because
he
has
like
that
him.
charm. He can make that work for him, but being a cocky asshole just kind of makes you hate him. Like, that's I really couldn't do that. Like, he still got me with some of his one-liners just because of how silly they were and how childish it was. But he was not a great fit for this role.
No, he doesn't quite work here. You need someone like oh god, who's a good example? I mean, honestly, not even Arnold Schwarzenegger, like just somebody with a different caliber of attitude. Mm-hmm. Less more military, less individual in a way, less iconoclastic. Mm-hmm. Like, Van Damme kind of stands out from other people. This guy should be a soldier. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it is just his personality and everything. Of course, his otherness, his foreignness does really stand out as this cocky American soldier. But I think, like, Van Damme can do cocky. Like, I feel like if he had played Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat and was kind of a cocky asshole Hollywood movie star, I think that could actually work for him.
Sure.
Because he's even kind of played with that image a little bit later on, but I don't know. Yeah, I just don't buy him as the all-American hero within this.
Well, of course you can't. But yeah, I mean, I've seen clips of the first Mortal Kombat, and it's kind of goofy because that actor does not look like a martial arts expert, where Van Damme actually kind of does. Like, Van Damme seems like confident.
Oh, and did you notice the stinger scene at the end?
Oh, I didn't watch to that point. Oh god, I should.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I had to listen to that Hammer song, so I stayed till the end credits. But this is something I didn't realize when I watched it before. I didn't know it was here. But basically, it just cuts back inside Bison's stronghold, and you hear the computer saying like, 1 solar battery left, 1 solar battery powering, system back online, and then very much like a shredder busting up out of the water or something, or out of the trash can, like, you see Bison's hand just like come up, but that's
oh no, Bison returns.
Yeah, for a sequel that would never be.
Nope, because the markets were a very different thing in 1994.
Well, not only that, but Raul Julia dying as well. Like, I think 2 months prior to the movie getting released or something. Yeah, that kind of killed it, because you had to have Bison in a Street Fighter movie, and Raul Julia was kind of one of the main saving graces of this, so there's no way you could have done it without him.
To be honest, it's kind of amazing that insurance was okay with him doing the movie. It's funny, because
I feel like they didn't know
right?
about it. Well, I mean, usually, but maybe it was a bit looser, and they were filming overseas in like Bangkok and Australia, so maybe it's a little bit different there.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the director didn't even know that he had just had like surgery for stomach cancer until he arrived on set and looked deathly. So maybe that was something that just kind of happened after he had signed on, but before he got there, kind of thing, and he just wanted to keep working. But actually, oddly enough, Van Damme did try to get a sequel to this made for a number of years, like in the early 2000s, and it just never really came together. They couldn't get the financing right. So eventually, Capcom just decided to do a straight, like, separate movie, a reboot that was called Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, that came out in 2009.
Yeah.
And that movie is also amazingly bad. Like, it is hilarious, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it. This is a Van Damme podcast, so we're not going to do it on here, but I highly recommend anyone watch it. If for nothing else, very much so how Raul Julia is to this Street Fighter, Chris Klein is to Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, because he plays Charlie Nash in that, and he is such a slimy goofball in that it is completely worth watching just for his performance. God bless you, Chris Klein.
Chris Klein is a really good, solid actor who, like, has never quite gotten his due. Like, he'll do some interesting stuff like Willard, or, like, will pop up in, like, Comedy Central shows. Mm-hmm. But he never quite got his shot.
I know, and he actually has really good comedic timing, but I think it's just... I think it's his face. People didn't like his face for some reason.
He looks kind of like an asshole, which works for him, but
yeah,
it's too bad. You know, he's a good actor.
Yeah, and he actually seems like a pretty good guy, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing we're going to do before plugs and stuff is give this a final Van Damage rating on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 would just be terrible, awful nonsense. I usually give his 2002 Die Hard ripoff Derailed as an example of that, which I hate. I'm dreading doing for the show eventually. And then all the way up to a 10, which would be like a Bloodsport, kind of a perfect Van Damme movie, all the tropes there and everything, but you're basically judging it on A, how entertaining it is as a movie overall, and B, how good Van Damme is in it.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a kind 6.
That is a very kind 6.
Yeah.
Because I'm always very generous with these, and I was thinking about saying 6, but then in my heart of hearts, I was like, it's a solid 5.
Well, it was so entertaining, and like I had a better time than I expected, that I would give it a 6 out of Van Damage rating. Because, like, I had a fine time.
Yeah, given that I drank 2 beers while watching it, I'll give it a 6 as well.
Sure.
But in all honesty, it's a solid 5.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't blame you.
So Connor, tell us, where can we find you on the interwebs? What are you working on? What do you got going on?
All right, so I have a Facebook page under my writing name, CM Crawford. So if you want to check out any horror stories or poems I've written, you can do that. I'm published in a number of different journals and magazines. I also have a band called Tin Flowers that you can check out at tinflowers.bandcamp.com. Oh, and last thing, I write reviews for punknews.org. Semi-irregularly, but you can check those out. Just look up under my name.
Didn't you do a piece on Pinkerton recently?
A couple months ago, yeah, I did on Pinkerton. Yeah,
I remember reading that. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I love that album. It's even better than I remembered. It's a great album.
It is a great album, but it's also just like really weird, creepy, shitty 20-year-old guy stuff.
Oh yeah. No, it's so personal and idiosyncratic, but like I was surprised by Butterfly making me weepy. I was really moved by it.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get you, but most of it is just like raging male privilege hormones going on.
Oh, it's just this deep ball of rage and creepy need. All the vulnerability in it is really staggeringly creepy.
I did not expect to spend so much time talking about Weezer on a Van Damme podcast, but hey, we're making cool connections here all the time.
There we go.
Anyway, thank you very much, Connor, for coming on the show. Feel free to come back on sometime if you had another Van Damme movie you want to discuss.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and of course, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at pod_Damme. Right? Yeah, Pod Damme.
There you go.
And we're also on crushcelluloid.com and on the Facebooks and everything like that. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you here next time on Jean-Claude Van Damme. Straight to my feet. When you feel the beat, you gotta move. Straight to my feet. Oh, straight to my feet. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Straight to my feet. When you feel the beat, you gotta move.
This funk like 4 flat tires, pumping it higher. The roof's on fire. The homies ain't tired. It's my desire to break you off, fool, but you can't tell, cause I hit the beat first in its own. Yeah, strictly for my homies not down with the front gang, straight to the floor, we pumping it up, man. I'm grabbing me a freak and I'm straight to my feet. Yeah, straight to my